So hello fellow Earthlings. This is Earthling 64554633728. And first the Soviet Union and now the US, as in Afghanistan. So I remember looking at that movie with Tom Hanks where he was playing a US senator. And because of Tom Hanks and his fighting for the Afghan people, they were able to get rid of the Soviets, right? He was able to give them, was it rocket-propelled grenades or bazookas or something like? Oh yeah, it was those. I think it was heat-seeking missiles that you could have on your shoulder or something like that, and that really served to be a big problem for the Soviets. I'm not doubting that what that particular senator did definitely would have been a sore problem for the Soviets. But at the same time, the fact that the US has had to sign this deal with the Taliban, which is, Trevor Noah was joking about it recently. Yeah, I consume a lot of Trevor Noah, at least for the moment. Basically, at the end of it, he was like, so you guys just don't do any more 9/11s, That was basically what the US was simmering down to and accepting. Whereas before they would have gone into Afghanistan, just like the US would have gone into Iraq and figured, okay, we know how to fix this. But if anything, this proves that we were all, I don't know about anybody else, but I was definitely thinking, okay, sooner or later, the Taliban are going to be beat back, and that's going to be the end of that. Maybe not recently, maybe not in the last 10 years, I would have thought that, but certainly at the beginning, I would have had that idea, just like, with Iraq or any other country, that sooner or later the US is going to prevail. As I would have been telling a friend of mine, Afghanistan is like a modern version of Vietnam, if not Korea, which is to say that even when you have nukes, you can't just force people to do what you want them to do. Unless you want to just kill everybody in the country, So you still have to have some kind of ability to deal. And I'm 100% certain that the US tried to deal with the Taliban. Apparently a lot of the money that was put into Afghanistan was just, basically paid to Taliban leaders to say, be nice. But that didn't work. For one thing, it certainly doesn't help that one of Afghanistan's, or Afghanistan's major export, which is heroin, is something that the US on the surface, can't condone. So when you're, the country that you're trying to gain control of, when their biggest crop is something that you're in another war against, it doesn't really help you. Because when you go to destroy these people's poppy fields, you're destroying their source of their income, and you want them to be nice to you and play ball with you. That obviously is not going to work. So that doesn't help at all. At least with respect to Iraq, Iraq was pumping oil, so it's not like you're against oil and you're going to say stop pumping oil. So, and Iraq was horrible too, the amount of civilians and the suicide bombings and all of these different things. If there's anything that the Middle East shows us, it's that even though the US is the most powerful global superpower, that it doesn't amount to hill of beans when it comes to controlling people. At the end of the day, a country, one of the poorest countries in the world, the people in that country have struck a truce with a superpower. I mean, let's stop to think about that for a moment. The global superpower of the world has come to a truce with a failed state. Isn't that like the absolute top and the absolute bottom? It's like looking at the person who comes first in a race and the person who comes last in a race, or the strongest person in the room with the weakest person in the room, and you have to have a truce. So, and I mean, it's the same kind of lesson that apparently we didn't learn with respect to, Vietnam, or with respect to so many other countries around the world, with Cuba, I mean, Cuba should have bended the knee, right? Have bent the knee a long time ago. And here they are. They're not. I mean, maybe in the past, and even if you look at Northern Ireland, or you look at Ireland, England or the UK, the country with the sun never set on it, had and continues to have an issue with Ireland. I mean, I think there are a lot of examples in history where, and this is something that I was talking about with a friend of mine, is something you can look at many. I mean, you could look at Rwanda. You can look at with respect to the Hutus and the Tutsis. The Tutsis used to lead Rwanda, and then there was that whole genocide where the Hutus, I don't want to say did they overthrow the Tutsis and purge them, and some of the Tutsis that I recently read about it, some of the Tutsis who had fled Rwanda decades before, they went back to Rwanda in the form of an army, and that army now again rules Rwanda. I mean, I'm sure that there's still going to be ethnic problems in that country because of the disparity between, these ruling Tutsis and the Hutus, who are below. And as far as I read, were treated horribly by the Tutsis in the past, long before the genocide. And I guess that's what precipitated, or at least fostered or fueled, the genocide against the Tutsis. So it's like these lessons that we just either don't learn or don't want to know about. Maybe we think that our generation will, whatever problems that persist might skip our generation, and we don't really need to know about that. But I was telling a friend about Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, and about how I can't remember the exact way that it went, but it was the idea that a small group was dominating, I think, either the galaxy or a bunch of different solar systems, and the means that they were using to do it was through religion and then technology and through other means. So as time progressed, they used subsequent means to maintain themselves at the top of the heap. And if you want to get an idea of how it works with respect to religion, I think India had some issues where the Muslims were the ruling people of India. But anyway, it all comes down to the fact that we assume, and it's something that I would have mentioned before, that your greatest strength sometimes can be your greatest weakness. And for the US, with the most guns and the most tanks and the most planes, and the most bombs. I'm sure the idea is that, oh, they don't have enough guns, they don't have enough tanks, they don't have enough bullets, they can't beat us. Well, they don't have to beat you. They just have to resist. Because that's what the strong want the weak to acquiesce, to give up, and to do what they say. But that's the thing. If you think that you're going to come in here and run everything, then you're usually in for some sort of a problem, unless you kill most of the people, as with the Native Americans of the Americas. That's the main reason why there wasn't persistent resistance and problems, because most of them were dead long before most colonists came back to try to colonize the Americas. Most of these people were dead. Otherwise, they would have had a much more troublesome time on their hands. Along the same lines as how there's no major European colonies per se in Africa, except for South Africa. Yeah, they dominated the South African European descendants were in control of South Africa. Yeah, I guess they had some problems though with terrorism and so on. So to me, I guess if you want something that's more lasting, like a more lasting peace, you kind of just have to do what they did in the past, which was intermarriage. You swap daughters and sons, well, primarily daughters, and that's another way, I suppose, that's another domination that has worked when it came to women. Women have unfortunately been subjugated and used as tools for stuff like that. And if you realize that it was only until the beginning of the last century that women were even given the right to vote. That is to be sure, even when before women were allowed to vote, it wasn't like everybody was allowed to vote anyway. It was people who had land. But even if a woman had land, she still wouldn't have been able to vote. So yeah. But and as I was pointing out to a friend of mine, the Pope, is the leader of so many people, and they don't have an army. You have to, and am I trying to to show or to give a class on how to become an absolute ruler? No, I'm not. But I think what it comes down to is we both win, or you win, I win. If you have a win-win situation, I'm sorry I put it so awkwardly at first, but if you have a win-win situation, that's when you can come to a consensus. That's when you can reach a truce. If you're fighting against another side, hopefully they just fall over and completely die, if you want to be the boss and win. But if it is that you just want peace, not at any cost, but if you want peace, everybody has to be willing to give up something. You can't just say, okay, we're gonna come in here with our Western ideals and we're going to take over. Or you can't expect to shift an entire culture in a generation, or less even than a generation. You can't expect huge changes for the most part. Yes, there are instances where there are huge changes, but I don't think that even ends well. I don't think that it does. So I think anybody coming in with the idea that military might can overwhelm the weak and win the day and you get what you want through force, I think they're always going to have a surprise, especially if you're not someone who as a student of history, you're always going to come in and get a surprise that, yeah, you may be 10 times bigger or 100 times bigger, like a virus to a human being, or however many orders of magnitude bigger, but you can still get killed by that virus. So anyway, guys, wish me lucks. You can like or unlike. You can comment and say why. You can subscribe and or share. Or of course, you can do nothing. But I'd prefer if you did one of those. Thanks. Peace.